We've covered a lot of ground in becoming familiar with Studio One 4, and we're going to finish up our Foundations chapter with a look at the transport bar. And we're going to run through this pretty quickly. We'll start from the left here and just make our way across. Now, the first item that we have here is a MIDI icon, and this is an area that you want to pay attention to if you're having MIDI issues, if your external keyboard is not triggering VST instruments. If you notice, when I press a key on my controller, then this area does light up, as well as the meter above here. But this is something to pay attention to, because if you're triggering your controller and this is not lighting up, then you know that your MIDI is not getting into Studio One somehow. And so you want to look at your connections and setup. Now, if I click on this icon, we open up the MIDI monitor and we can actually see the exact messages that are being sent into Studio One. So if I press C on my keyboard, we can see we have Note On and Note Off for C3 here. And at the top, you can choose to filter out messages so you won't be too inundated with information when you're using the controls on your keyboard. We can come down to the bottom and clear out any information as well. So I'll go ahead and close out that window, and let's move on here to the performance area. The top is our CPU meter, so we can see just what's going on with our processor and how much it's being taxed. We then have a disk performance meter, and if I click on the word performance, we have this performance monitor window. We can see again our CPU, our disk. Then at the bottom, we can click show devices to see exactly what's going on with any VST instruments that we have going on. Right now, we only have the presence, so we can see that here and what's going on with it. I'll close that out. And then next here, we have a cache activity icon. And then next to that, we have the position of our song cursor. So if I go ahead and press play, we can see that that updates to show the position of the cursor. We can actually use our mouse wheel to change the location as well. Next to that, we have an area for navigating to the previous marker. We don't have any markers, but if I come up above here to the marker track, set the cursor here, and I will click the plus symbol to add a marker. I'll come to bar 6, add another marker there. Now I can click this arrow to return to the previous markers. This one here will take us to the next markers. Now in the center of these, we have fast forward and rewind, and these tie in with the plus and minus key on our numeric keypad. So if I press plus on the numeric keypad, we can see that we fast forward there. If I use the minus on the numeric keypad, we rewind. We then have the standard stop, play, and record, which we can just click to access. We then have a loop button, so we can activate and deactivate our loop by clicking here. We can see up above our loop is set between the beginning of bar 2 and 4. So as I click, we can see that we activate there. You can also use the / on your QWERTY keyboard. Next in line, we have the position of our left and right loop markers. So while we can adjust up above by clicking and dragging, we can also hover in this field here and use the mouse wheel to change their position. We then have record mode replace. So in this way, if you're recording MIDI, generally it will mix your latest performance with your previous one, and you'll have all of that MIDI data together. But if you would like for the new performance to replace the old one, you would then click this here. Below that, we have a record panel button to access the record panel, and we'll take a closer look at this in a later section. I'll go ahead and hide that. We then have pre-roll that we can activate by clicking. We have auto punch. We then have pre-count, and we have a wrench icon here, which is going to take us to our metronome settings. And we can see that our metronome is not active right now. If I click here, this is how we can activate our click track within the transport. We see this then becomes active, and we have volume controls for the accent and the beat. We can also change whether it's a click, or we can choose from one of these items listed here. If we've made any adjustments that we'd like to keep, we can just choose to store that as a preset. Here is where we can load our presets. And then here we have our pre-count and pre-roll, which after we click, we can see that this lights up here. And we can even choose how many bars we would like to apply to these. Now when we have the click track active, we can choose to repeat the accent, click in pre-count only. And if I deactivate, which is deactivated down here as well, you see that these go away. I'll go ahead and close that metronome setup, and let's take a look at what we have next here. Timing. Right now we are in 4/4, but we could simply click once and change our song timing or time signature anytime we'd like. I'll put that back to 4/4. We can also choose a key for the song. So if I click once, we have this window here where I can choose a particular key for our song. Next to that, we have our tempo, and if I click once, I can enter in a value, press enter, and our song has now changed to reflect this new 90 BPM. If we'd like to manually tap in a tempo, we can just repeatedly click on the word tempo here. We can also tie this to a MIDI device to use a controller to tap that in as well. Now here we have our level meters for the master out. We have a fader for the master out. If I open up the mix console by clicking on mix and use my mouse wheel to adjust this, we can see that our master fader is moving as well. Now here we have a little button for changing the master out from stereo, which is what it's in right now. If we click once, we then change that to a mono output, which will be useful for mixing. I'll return that back to stereo. And then finally we have our edit, mix, and browse buttons.